What's the deal, YouTube? It's your girl, Miss Honey. Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It is your girl, Miss Honey, here with a review for Lovecraft Country Season 1, Episode 3, Holy Ghost. Now, I gave you guys a very long review for episode 2. We needed to do that. We needed to pull it apart because it's a lot of nuances. We talked about this in this series, and you will just be so confused if you don't catch them. That's why I'm here. I'm here for that reason, and you guys are here for that reason. If you're watching it, what I miss, you catch. What you miss, I catch. But let's get into it. Now, of course, the show opens and Leti is in church, and we're getting like this full-on traditional Baptist church shouting, and the usher board is in all white gloves and all white. Are they more like the missionaries, I guess? And there's a lady shouting, and they've kind of got her roped off so she can shout without hurting herself. There's no music playing. We just get the visual. But what we do hear playing is this poem. And the poem is to an individual named Lee, L-E-I. It's a very good poem, and we're coming from this great distance off, honing in on Leti. Leti is sitting there a few rows back. Everyone's standing but Leti, she's sitting there. And really her mind is kind of just going back over the past few weeks, just how much they have gone through. And she is starting to drop a tear and cry. I'm sure she's in church trying to get her connection with the Father, because she has seen so much. She feels like, you know, I got to get this off of me, and the way to do that is to be in church. But she's in here, and she's saddened that much more. The more she looks at everything and looks around at people going about their daily lives and following their daily rituals, and knowing that firsthand that it don't mean a hill of beans. Like, there are forces out there that are so formidable that these little traditions don't really mean anything. And it's peeking behind the veil, if you will. She's had that opportunity, and so all of the things that used to bring her joy, she not able to connect with them anymore. It's a really good moment. Again, the costuming in this series is absolutely excellent. Leti looks beautiful. It's several weeks after George's funeral, okay? And so we see where Tick is making breakfast for Diana, and she's setting the table. You know, they're really good friends. She loves him. They have some of the same interests. A lot of the things that she's doing, her drawings, and the fact that she's a seer, he can kind of relate to those things because he's a believer. You know, he's a believer. And so they're having what appears to be a good time, but we see where when Diana goes to set a place for her dad, George, she realizes there's no need to set a place there because George is no more. Okay, and so we get to see Hippolyta in her room, and she's getting herself up and getting herself ready, and she's sitting at her vanity. And after she gets her hair together and gets her makeup together, she pulls out a book that was George's favorite. I think it is a book about vampires, if I'm not mistaken. And she opens the book up, and she touches the pages, and she feels the pages, and then she just begins to rip the pages out one by one. She's not looking at the pages, she's just ripping and allowing herself to go into this place. I imagine it's grief. I imagine having only talked to George that one time when they were initially at Leti's brother's house in episode 1. Technically, she hasn't talked to him since then, and so that was the last conversation she had with him. And so I think this thing that she's doing where she's taking his favorite book and pulling those pages out is just her way of not only connecting with George, but also being angry with George because she never got to speak with him again. It was a loving conversation that they had the last time, but she never spoke with him again. And so there is this grief, but there's also this bitterness and resentment for that fact. And when she comes into the kitchen and Tick is there and Diana, and they're jovial, and she's like, Mama, sit down and have some coffee and something to eat. And Tick was like, I made breakfast. And she was like, oh, okay. And then she goes over to get her a cup for coffee, and she sees that the other cups that he's washed, they're up right side up instead of upside down. You know, you turn them upside down so stuff won't fly into the cup and get it dirty, right? So it's right side up, and she flips it upside down and sits down. And he's trying to talk and trying to, you know, keep it light, but he can tell she dry. She dry. She in a real dry place. And so then we get to see where Tick goes over to see Montrose, his dad, and he asks Montrose, can he crash there for a few days? He gonna head back to where he came from. He gonna head back because they kind of feel like everything is kind of sort of a done deal, and George being gone, it's kind of weird. Like his daddy's not gonna help him. As a matter of fact, when he get there to talk to Montrose about staying there, Montrose drunk as Cooter Brown. I got a feeling that Montrose is always low-key drunk as hell. Okay. And Montrose don't want him to stay, and he tells Montrose that Hippolyta's having a hard time. She's having a hard time dealing with George being gone, and that he feels bad. He feels guilty. It's the reason why he stayed with her for the last 2 weeks, to help with Diana and to help with the funeral and help with the transition, okay, of everything. But apparently Hippolyta is going to continue on with the Black Traveler's Guide and the bookstore. And the editor has called for the next few pages in the Black Traveler's Guide, and it was something that they did together, George and Hippolyta. He would write it and she would do the editing, and she was like, well, just tell the guy if he calls back again and I'm not here, tell the guy that I'll get those pages over to him tomorrow. And he said, well, no problem, I did it myself. I did the editing. She said, you did? He said, yeah. You got to go. You got to go. Like, I don't want you here. I don't want you here. You pushing me and moving me in at a pace I don't want to go. This Hippolyta. So when he talks with his dad, and his dad, he's explaining to his dad that you know, Hippolyta wants to know more, and Montrose is like, we agreed what we were gonna tell her. We agreed that that was best. Like, telling all that other stuff, it's gonna be too much. Like, no one's gonna believe that. Maybe Diana, but Hippolyta probably won't believe all of that. Atticus leaves there, and Montrose decides that he's gonna go over and see Hippolyta later on that afternoon. Hippolyta's coming in from groceries, picking up groceries and out. And when she comes in, Montrose walks up and he helps her with her groceries. She don't want to see him either. You know, she's pulled together. She's doing what she has to do. Yes, she is a widow, but she is in this immense amount of sadness. She loved George, and George loved her. She don't want to see Montrose either, but she lets him help her in with her groceries. And then she goes inside, puts the groceries down, and he wants to have this small talk, kind of trying to fill her out a little bit. Hippolyta don't want to talk about that. Now when he goes to put the groceries up, the bag falls over and out falls this book, a new book that is George's favorite book. Same book, but it's a new book. And he was like, she picked it up, and he said, oh, this is George's favorite book. And she said, yeah, I spilled coffee on the other copy. She don't want him to know that this is what she's doing, that she's working her grief out through hurting, or you know, it's semantics, but basically putting it into the book. And she said, I know what y'all told me. When she sat down, she said, I know what y'all told me about George's death, but I don't believe it. I know there's more to the story, and I want you to tell me what it is. Of course, Montrose goes silent. He don't want to talk about it either. Plus, like he told Tick, they agreed. He said, well, you know, the sheriff, she said, I know you said the sheriff shot him. That sheriff shot George, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I know there's more to the story. He says nothing. So we get to see where Leti is walking down the sidewalk and she's talking to Ruby, her sister. And Leti, I think, is the youngest of the three children. I think her brother's name is Montgomery, and of course we have Ruby. We got to meet Ruby in the first episode. We know she's a singer. We know that she took care of their mom before she passed. We know that Leti was off doing her own thing, really being militant, kind of fighting for the people, you know, just being, you know, pro-black and that type of thing, and lying 7 ways to Sunday to get Montgomery and her brother Montgomery and Ruby to send her money. And so she's walking down and she is reciting all the money that Ruby had sent her, bail money to get her camera fixed. And Ruby was like, you told me that was for light bill, you told me that was for the phone bill, you told me that was for the water bill. And Leti is you know, kind of glazing over it all. I know, but I want to give you all that money back. And Ruby was like, and she Ruby was like, what's going on? Like, what is all of this about? And they walk up to this house and there's this soul sign in the yard. And she says, how would you like to never pay rent again? Well, Leti has bought this house. And Ruby want to know, how you afford this house? And she was like, oh, come on inside. And Ruby don't understand what's going on. And they're in a predominantly white neighborhood, basically a white neighborhood, forget predominantly. And this house is huge, okay? And she want to know, you done borrowed all this money and now you got money to be buying a house? Like, where you get the money for that? And she said, don't worry about all that. And so when she goes inside and she sees how ramshackled it is, she's like, oh, never mind. I see why you got the house. They look around the house and there's a lot of stuff that's wrong with the house. It needs some fixing up, you know, and they're going to have to get boarders to help pay the rent when it come due, or the mortgage when it come due, the note. And there's an elevator. The elevator doesn't work. It worked when they sold her the house, but it don't work now. Okay. And after she talks to Ruby, and Ruby is like, I don't know if I want to move right now. I don't need all this headache right now and all this work right now, because I'm trying to study up to get down at the department store. I forget the name of the department store. It's like Bergdorf or Montgomery Ward or something like that, you know. And it is considered very, very prestigious for a black person to get a job at this department store. Like, the only other thing that black people do is, you know, like a cook or cleaning houses, maybe driving a black taxi cab, something like that. You know, there's small businesses that they own, but if you're gonna work for somebody and get a paycheck, it's usually those jobs, right? So this is considered to be like a prestigious job. So you know, Leti don't really want her to do that. Like, she want her aspirations to be higher. And Ruby's like, no, you don't think I can get a job down there? Yes, I think you can get a job down there. I'm just telling you, they would be lucky to have you. Anyway, long story short, Ruby decides that she is going to move in, and this is what they do. Next thing we see, where Leti has gotten the house cleaned up and tenants are moving in to their respective rooms. They're mostly people that Leti knows, you know, artistic people. They are moving in, and we see white people kind of gathering a little bit, watching these people move into this house. These black people move into the house, and they're like, what are they thinking? They can't believe that we're going to let them stay here. And there's a lot going on with this house. So we see where Leti is kind of, you know, she's going to get someone to come out and fix the elevator. Everybody's got to move their things in by hand. There's little strange things that's going on around the house. We see where, you know, there's noises that's going on. Tick comes over, and this is the move-in day for everybody else, and Tick, you know, is like, oh, I heard you bought this house and you were moving in over here. And she's like, yeah, I haven't heard from you since we got back, since George's funeral. And he was like, yeah, I've been going through a lot. I've been over there with Hippolyta and Diana helping them. And she was like, yeah, I thought you would have called me. You know, I thought you would have reached out to me. I went through a lot with that, and I'm still going through, and I'm still dreaming about it. I'm still having an issue with it. And he was like, yeah, I know. And so he tells her, she tells her that they got one more room, and he was like, well, I'm going back to where I came from, and I'm not going to stay, but I will stay for like a few days or whatever. And at the same time, they started to hear this car horn. And when they hear this car horn, they run outside and they see where the white people, the men, have gathered. And they got all of these cars parked right in front of Leti's house. And each car got a brick tied to the horn. And so they got about 4 cars out there that's got the horns going all at the same time. Like, this is like Chinese water torture. It's basically meant to run the black people out. You know, this is not their only form. This is just the start of the torture, right? Trying to get them to run out, which I don't really understand, because the horn blowing on your side of the street and the other side of the street too. So how they putting up with the fact that the horn is blowing? Apparently it's doable when you running black folks off. So they just look at him, and Tick decides that he's gonna stay. Oh, I'm definitely gonna stay. You know what I'm saying? Because now he is in protect Leti mode, right? So Leti goes on about her business. Now, like I said, she's laying in the bed. It's strange things happening. She is hot all of a sudden. It is hot as all get out. And she's laying on the side, and the window is behind her. And up from the side of the bed is this old lady. It's a ghost, clearly. And the bottom half of her jaw is ripped off. It's startling. It's startling. It's startling. Like, ugh. I'm not easily frightened, but that scared me, right? Because Leti's none the wiser. She put her feet on the floor on that side of the bed. The ghost is gone. And she gets up, and she's going to let the window open and get some fresh air. But when she lets the window open, what does she hear? The horns are blowing. So she closes the window back down, and she gets her flashlight, and she goes down to see what's going on with the unit in the building. You know, why is this moist, steamy air coming in, right? And so she goes down there, and she turns it off. So basically someone has fixed it where the heat is on. It's on high, and that's why it's so humid and moist. And so she turns it off, and she hears a noise, and she follows the noise, and she finds this room, this empty room, and it just looks like a regular old room. But then she hears something, and she chases it, and then there's this noise, and she starts screaming. It's all kind of like in the shadows and the darkness, but basically she's got ghosts in her home. She's got ghosts in her home. Now, she doesn't know why yet. She's got ghosts in her home, but y'all know Leti is very, very easygoing. So she don't really know for sure what's happening, but it's not enough to worry her. So they having a party, you know. Ruby is singing, and Hippolyta has brought Diana. Hippolyta has made all of this food for the party, and they passing out, you know, their own version of Hunch Punch, but it looked like lemonade, and all the guys are dressed nice. And Leti got on this blue, like blue-green dress, baby, aquamarine, almost sateen. It's got a shine to it, and it's fitting her like a glove, and she got that hair bouncing there, baby, like Diane Carroll. And she is having a good time, a really, really good time. And you know, Hippolyta talks to her and says, you know, she's glad that Tick is staying with over there at Leti's house, because he was getting on her nerves. And Leti was like, why? And she was just like, I don't, you know, she didn't want to say why. She didn't want to say why to Leti, right? Because Leti ain't family, you know, family, right? And she said, well, he just getting on my nerves, leaving my cups right side up and whatnot. And she breezes on past it. Then we see Diana, and she downstairs with the other kids. And Diana is leading them in a series of games that have to do with the supernatural. Now, they done played one game, like a seance type game, and now they finna play this Ouija board game. And something happens during the Ouija board games that spells out George. And Diana is mad as hell. How dare you? That is not funny. The guy said, I couldn't control it. It did it by itself. I was like, ooh, y'all playing. Y'all need to quit playing. Y'all need to quit playing with these here dark arts. Yeah, it ain't funny. It ain't funny. Anywho. So we go on back upstairs, and now Leti is dancing with a guy, and we see the dude from the bar that Tick went into on the first episode to find out a little bit more about his daddy, the one that met him there at the door. You can tell he don't like this dude. They went to high school together. He don't like this dude. And so this dude ease up behind him while he watching Leti dance. He said, she surely is something else, ain't it? And Tick don't say nothing. And he said, I wanted to ask you, they say that y'all was friends or whatever, but I wanted to know if it was okay if I could, you know, if I could get with her, you know what I'm saying? If it's okay if I can work my magic and get her to get, you know. And Tick was like, you got a point. He was like, well, I just wanted to know if we... Tick said, get away from me. And the guy was like, okay, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it, right? All the while he looking at Leti, and she is dancing, and you know, she done turned around on this guy. She just having fun, but it's beautiful to him and it's sexy to him, and he been wanting her now for 3 episodes, right? And they done been through a lot together, so that connects them as well. Well, she goes upstairs and she gonna use the bathroom, and he comes into that bathroom, and she was like, oh, and he don't say 3 words. He yokes her up and gives her the sugar of her lifetime. Kiss, kiss, kiss. And she is here for this kiss, and she is here for this sugar, right? Now, this ain't Spectre Tick. This is regular old Tick, right? And they kiss and make out, and he get them panties down and get his pants down, and right there on the side of the sink, they do it. And it's done. I'm sure it had been building up for Tick, you know what I'm saying? But it did kind of happen kind of fast. So it's done, and he looks down and reaches down, and it's blood on his hand. She said, oh, I didn't know I was getting my monthly. I'm sorry. And he was like, oh, no, it's okay. She was like, I'm so sorry. He leaves out in embarrassment, right? Ooh, it's a moment. And so she is taking a moment in the bathroom, and she looks like she's devastated or saddened, or it's, I don't know, it's weird. And so she's able to pull herself together and go downstairs, and they're playing cards, and the party is still continuing. And behind her in the window, they can see this huge light. Well, that light is a cross burning in the yard. And I'm always amazed that a person is able to erect a cross in your yard and like get it in the ground and set it on fire and nobody knows it. Like, it seems like it happens out of the blue. Now, I understand when people sleep in the bed, but y'all having a whole party, right? And all the windows and doors are open because it's umpteen thousand people, umpteen hundred people in this house, right? Anyway, I digress. So when Leti sees that cross burning, and the horns is still blaring, and she done lost. She done had this encounter with Tick that has just put her in this weird headspace. She gets her back. She done had about all that she could stand, and then she comes out of there like Beyonce, swinging that bat like, hold up, they don't love you like I love you. Slow down, they don't love you like I love you. And she goes and takes and busts every window and takes the butt of it like she did with that lady at the tower, at the stone tower, and busts the brick off the top of the horn. And she goes to the next one and bloop, and she busts it. And she bloop, and she busts it. Now, by this time, the white people are outside and they are all looking at, and they looking at the way she, you know, taking charge and taking her power back and deciding she ain't gonna put up with it no more. And of course they have called the police. Well, you know, the police was right around the corner anyway, waiting to see what the black people's gonna do about the fact that the cross was burning in their yard. You know, they just itching for a reason to kill somebody. And so they put her in the paddy wagon and take her on down to the jail. Now, on the way down to the jail, the man in the paddy wagon, the police officer, is 2 driving, is 1 in the back, right? It take 3 of y'all. It take 3 of y'all. And they got her handcuffed. And he said, you know anything about that house you living in? And she was like, I mean, you got something you want to tell me? He was like, it belonged to a guy, I think they say his name is Horatio Winthrop, and he was a doctor. And you know, it was a lot of interesting things happening in that house, and black folks was disappearing when he owned that house. You know anything about it? And she was like, I don't know anything about all of that. And so he was like, yeah, interesting. And so then he, right on cue, his boys start swerving. He goes and holds the strap up top, right? And that strap up there keeps him from flipping around the car, but it don't keep Leti because her hands are handcuffed. And it is literally throwing her all around the car. I mean, she is bruised and battered and lip busted and all of that. This is their punishment to her. So by the time she gets to the jailhouse, I mean, she's been brutalized. She's been assaulted, basically. And so when she gets out of there, she makes up in her mind she's going to find out a little bit more about the guy that owned the home. And so she's already heard about how on the north side of Chicago, people were disappearing and black people was disappearing and no one ever heard from it again. Of course, they're not going to be investigated because the police are all white people, right? They don't care anything about black people disappearing, but Leti is looking into it, and she has got all of these clippings of the people that's been wrote up in the black papers about the black people that's missing. So she got all of their names of the missing people, and she got the dude that owns the home, that owned the home before she did. And she reads a little bit more about him and finds out that he was a doctor or a scientist or something like that. And she's absorbing herself into all of this. Meanwhile, her tenants are moving out, and Ruby comes to her and says to her that the tenants are moving out. We're not going to be able to make the note because the tenants are moving out. They don't want to have anything to do with these white people. They don't want to get involved with it. And so Leti said, that's fine. Let them move out. I'll just take the rest of the money that mama gave me, take some of the money that mama gave me, left me, and pay for it. And Ruby said, you say what now? And instantly, Leti knows she has said too much. She said she got a call from a lawyer that told her this is the money that her mama left her. And Ruby said, so let me get this straight. Mama left you money even though you never came to see her, you didn't take care of her, and you didn't even come to her funeral. Okay? And you don't think to share it with me and Montgomery, your brother. Okay, we have sent you money after money after money, okay, and you have just pissed it away and lived your life however you want to live it while we around here being the responsible ones. You know what? You selfish. And Leti is frozen because she right. But Leti can't explain why her mama left her that money, left her this great inheritance. She felt like she was doing what was good, buying this house and having it as a boarding place for black people. When they come in town, they can have a place to stay, or they can have affordable housing, period. And Ruby said, miss me with all of that. You don't care nothing about all these people. The people you moved in are your artsy-fartsy friends. Don't try to make it seem like you doing something for the good of the community. This is to benefit you. I mean, she ripped into her. I gave you the gentle version, but she ripped into her. And Leti had all them tears welled up in the bottom of her eyes, and she blinked one time and it was like, whoosh. Her sister was right. Her sister was right. And she walked up one side of Leti and down the other. It was the truth. Leti couldn't argue with it. It was all the stuff She had been thinking about Leti, and she never said it. She never said it, and it crushed Leti's feelings. It crushed Leti's feelings because not only was she talking about the stuff that she was doing and how it was all selfish and frivolous and it didn't mean anything and all of that. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. If it had been my sister, I definitely would have been upset. Okay, so we see Leti at this restaurant, and she has got all of her paperwork out, all of these clippings and all of this research that she's done laid out, and in walks Tick. And Tick kind of wants to talk to her about that night. They kind of both embarrassed. It kind of happened kind of fast. It was kind of disheveled. It wasn't as loving, and Tick wanted to apologize. And he wanted to say he was sorry, and she was like, "No, you don't have to say you sorry." He was like, "No, so I didn't mean it to be like." She said, "Tick, it was my first time." So everybody's had her pegged as this, you know, number one, super duper spitfire, strong, tough as nails, and you know, invincible type individual. She can drive. She's well read, and she's worldly. She doesn't really seem like the kind of person you have to worry about. But we saw in the last 2 episodes that she is actually quite fragile. And here we see where you may get this perception that she's out there dating a bunch of men and having a good time, and you know, doing whatever it is she do. But the fact of the matter is, she's a virgin. She was a virgin, and Tick was the first person that she slept with. And Tick feels so bad. He feels so bad. It's just like, oh my gosh. But I mean, it says something that he recognizes that was something that was important, and it was something that needed to be treasured. But she don't really want to talk about it anymore. So he was like, "Fine, tell me what you got here." And she lets him know that she believes that the dude that owned the house before she did, the Dr. Winthrop, is actually was actually paying the white folks, was kidnapping the black folks and bringing them to him, and he was doing experiments on them, killing them and doing experiments on them, you know. And he was, and she said, "I think he is haunting my house. I think those people are haunting my house because their souls aren't at rest." And so he was like, "Well, okay, what do you want to do? Let me help you. What are we going to do?" And it's her idea to get this woman to do an exorcism. She's like a Creole woman or Haitian or something. And so the woman comes up to the house with a goat. Now it's nighttime. She got a live goat with horns and everything. And she was paid handsomely to come and break this spell and do this exorcism over this house and clear it of all the evil spirits. And she walks the goat up to the door and slits the goat's throat. And then she takes blood from the goat that she done put into a bowl, and she marks Leti, and she marks Tick, and she marks herself. Like, you know. And so they go inside and they walk around. She said, so they go down to this room that Leti had found, right? And when they get to this room, she was like, "Oh yeah, this is where it happened. This is where it all happened." And they lock hands, the 3 of them, and they begin to chant. Of course, it starts to go south real fast, because whatever this chant is bringing, is agitating the spirits. The number 1 spirit, which is Horatio Winthrop, right? And so they chanting and chanting and chanting and chanting and chanting, and she was like, "It's working, keep going." And then the sprinkler system comes on down there, and when the sprinkler system comes on, it washes the mark on their forehead off. Now, so since the mark is gone, it's like that protection for them is gone. And immediately the woman she brought in there, the Creole woman to do the seance, is battered and torn. She is lifted up off her feet into the ceiling and thrown into the wall and slammed to the floor, where she has passed out. And Leti is screaming, and it gets quiet. And every time it get quiet, it's like a transfer of the spirits. And when the woman gets up, she is now full of the ghost of Horatio Winthrop, and she is saying, "Get out of my house." you know, I want you out of my house. And she done yoked up Tick, trying to continue chanting, but she got Tick yoked up, and then it get quiet again. And when it get quiet again, and the woman falls, and Tick stands up, and he is walking towards Leti. Get out, bitch, get out of my house, bitch, get out of my house. Bitch. He's possessed with the ghost now. He's possessed with Winthrop's ghost now. And, ooh, it was frightening. And Leti is so upset because he is walking towards her. And as he walking toward her, we hear Shirley see, Satan, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Satan, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Ooh, wee. And so it comes to Leti, and she starts calling the names of all the people that he has killed. She starts calling. She said, you're not dead yet. You can take your power back, okay, and get him out of here, okay, and be free. This is what she telling them. And still Tick is walking towards, get out of my house. Who is terrifying? Lights are flickering. Now, all of this is going on downstairs. 3 white men upstairs have broken into their home. Now, remember that a lot of the tenants have moved out. Okay? And I don't know where Ruby is. Thank goodness she wasn't home. But they going room to room, basically, with bats trying to find the rest of the black people that are in there so they can beat them up or kill them and get rid of them, right? And run them on off of this property, right? And so the ghosts, the ones that Leti is calling forth, they behind the door. They know the white people there, and one by one they kill them, one by one. And we get to see more ghosts. We see a big black basketball player with a little head of a baby. That means a grown man was killed and the baby was killed. Okay, and he sewed the head on it. Now this is one of the ghosts. Okay, and we see the woman with the missing jaw, and we see people with missing limbs where he's experimented on them and cut their limbs off, and they're all there, you know. One guy goes opens the door to the elevator that don't work, and sticks his head and looks down, and when he looks up, that elevator cuts that head off. Huh? Yeah, y'all in here to do some damage, but you getting damaged. And so then we go back down to the basement and back down to where Tick is. And Leti is screaming and chanting, and now all of the ghosts there, all of the victims of this doctor have gathered, and they are chanting with her now, because and Tick is in the center, and she is screaming and she is chanting and she is chanting. And then we see where he appears as himself, Winthrop the ghost, and he is all rotten and mangled, and he is still, but he's trapped in this circle of the chanting, right? And Leti finally screams, and she says, "Get the duck out of my house now!" And we see where he gets exorcised. Out of here, done, gone. Okay, and Tick is standing there, and he is like, what is going on? And Leti is like, because she has once again had to rally herself, all of her strength, because another unfreaking believable thing has happened. I mean, if she wasn't a pillar of strength before, by the time this season 1 is over, baby, she gonna have her wings. Okay, all right, but we're gonna talk about that. So we see the next morning where the home is free and clear. The spirits have been allowed to go on about their way. When Winthrop's spirit was exorcised, their spirit was released to go on into the next life, and right. And so we see where people are moving in and kids are playing in the yard, and it looks good. It seems like it's a happy home. We still don't get to see Ruby. Okay, but we do get to see where Leti is walking around the home, and she is talking with a black reporter, and the reporter is going to do a write-up on Leti and the home and what it does for the black community in terms of affordable housing. Leti looks so beautiful, and she's in like this backless dress that's got a collar in the front, but the back is out of it. It's just beautiful. It's like a halter type dress. Really, really pretty. And she opens the elevator up and gets on the elevator with the lady and rides down to the first floor. And the woman said, well, let me ask you a question. Thank you for, you know, doing the interview and answering all of my questions. One more question for you. Do you know what happened to the 3 white men that lived in this neighborhood that disappeared? And Leti was like, I hadn't heard about that. And she gets on off, and just as she gets off the elevator, the woman takes a picture of it. Said, can I take a picture? And Leti was like, sure. And she takes a picture. Now, y'all know in episode 2, Leti died for a brief moment. I would not be surprised if Leti does not cast a shadow anymore. I would be surprised if Leti still has a reflection. I would not be surprised to hear that that picture did not come out clear. Something is up with Leti. Something is up with Leti. Something supernatural. I'm prepared to be wrong, but put a pin in that, right? And so they walk on off, and we see where the elevator door closes, and the elevator goes down like to the basement, past the basement, past the basement of basement. I mean, it goes down probably another 10, 12 feet maybe. And opens, and when it opens, we see the bodies of these white men all mangled and laid out, you know. And then we see where you come into the bodies and you look down the corridor, and there's lights hanging almost like a mine shaft, and you see where there's remnants of dead body all through there, like old skeletons and stuff, and you realize it is a ton of black bodies underneath this home. So then we get to see where Tick is standing across the street from this realty place, and we see where he's looking over at this realty place, and I believe it's the realty place that sold Leti the home. At the same time, he sees the silver fancy car, the one that helped them when they was coming out of Somerville, also the one that they crashed, the one where Leti got shot and so did George. We see that brand spanking new pull up to this realty place. And then we see where Tick's got his knapsack, and he goes on in, and there's a black man in there, and she's telling him something about the money has been wired and all of that. And she said, James, I think it's time for you to go. Now, evidently they put the realty place up just for a temporary period, because it's empty now, and he's taking the last of the boxes out of the place, and he leaves. And so Tick was like, so you were the one behind the money that Leti got. It wasn't her mother's inheritance. It was your money. And he's closing the blinds on the door. And he goes over and closes the blinds from the window. And she was like, yes, I mean, what are we talking about here? She says, how did you figure it out? And he says, I remember the name Winthrop from a painting that I saw in your daddy's house. And her eyes kind of fall, because once again, it proves that Tick's no ordinary man, right? She says, so you figured me out. What are you going to do about it? Tick pulls out a gun and points it towards her and says, I want you to stay away from me and my family and leave us alone. At the same moment that he pulls the gun out, he is frozen. He can blink and he can breathe, but he can't move. And she tells him, she said, Horatio Winthrop was a son of Adam. And he actually stole some pages from the Book of Names. He was kicked out of the organization because he stole these pages from the Book of Names, trying to achieve mortality for himself. Now, Titus took pages from the Book of Names, and he locked those pages in a vault and set a booby trap around it so they can't get them pages. But wouldn't it be nice if we can find those pages that Winthrop took somewhere in that home? Just imagine what it is we can do. And at the same time that she talking, she opening them blinds, and now he's able to function. He looks around at her and she says, if you work with me, we can achieve greatness, right? But you need to get a hold of yourself. And please remember, it's very dangerous for you to be walking around here with a gun and shooting white women. Everybody knows that's going to be bad for you. And she walks off. That is the episode. A much easier episode than episode 1 and episode 2. But still, we get a little bit more pieces to the puzzle. You guys tell me what you think about this episode and put it down below. And until next time, honeybees, I holla.